Hello, and welcome back to the PhD Journey Unplugged. I am Dr. Marilyn Ward, and this is my friend, Dr. Sarah Gordon. Today, we are going to talk about the physical struggles, neglecting health and wellness. So, it's real, and it's happened, and I look in the mirror and I can see the effects of it. So, Dr. Gordon, what has been your biggest physical struggle during this journey?
Oh Lord. Well, here we are, our third episode, and this is incredible. Can't believe we're already at number three.
Yeah,
So, in preparing for today, there's just so much information out there about the physical toll that stress and anxiety and burnout takes on our bodies. And when I was reading about it, I could relate to it so many different levels personally. And we're going to talk about the reality, the impact, and solutions. So when we get to the impact, I'm going to share a personal experience of what happened to me during school, which was kind of
okay.
like my moment where, okay, Sarah, if you don't get this under control, you're really going to get very sick. So I'll share that when we get into that part. But this is such a great topic. We need it. And I feel like we need to have an honest conversation about the mental health aspects of being in an
Yes.
academic environment, the competitiveness of it, and the rigor. And so I just think let's just be real and just say, you know what? It was hard.
Yes,
We just need to have an honest conversation about the mental health and physical um, impact it had on our lives.
I think so. And with us being in the health and human performance field, it's like
Right.
it resonates just a little bit more because for me as a coach for others with wellness, this hits like
Mhm.
super hard. And I was like, all right. So I while I'm giving advice, I'm taking my own advice
Right.
because like you're dealing with so many things and you're trying to figure it all out and still progress and move forward. And it's difficult. So, especially like I say, when I look in the mirror and I can see the effects of it, you know it's real. You know it's there.
Yeah, and I think when you start something, you're excited about it.
Yes.
And you have that energy, that adrenaline and excitement of settling into something. But then it's like, so I would say from like the reality of the situation was it kind of took a downward turn in terms of my
Yeah.
health, um, until it started to come up again. And then, and the truth is, and I shared this in past episodes, like we just wrapped up a few months ago in our programs, and I'm just starting to kind of come out of that kind of burnout and just the fatigue from it all,
Right.
and learning to reclaim my health. And so I don't think it's like I keep saying, kind of like my mantra, maybe it's never a straight path forward. So
Right.
I'm kind of finding my way back towards my physical health as well.
Yeah. A normal life,
And
you know,
normal life, right?
a normal life where you're not juggling so many different things. We've got one thing off of our checklist or our daily duties, but the aftermath of it is like, oh, well, now I've got to get back to my health, back to my regular wellness routine.
Yeah, definitely. And the reality of the situation is like there's a certain expectation that you have to carry a heavy load to get through, different aspects of the program. So for
Right.
me, and I've shared this again, and maybe it's redundant, but I think it's important to keep emphasizing that, you know, working late hours, um, working through the weekends, like you shared in our last episode about how you had to put Saturdays aside.
Yeah.
That was your
One
day.
day.
One day. You gave
Yeah.
yourself one
One day.
day. And I remember just, like just not being able to take vacations, or if you took a vacation, I remember being down in Florida one year, sitting in the hotel lobby working through the whole vacation to meet the Blackboard discussion posts,
Yes.
deadlines, or the assignments. So, you know, you can't, I wasn't able to just compartmentalize school. It kind of was just interwoven into my life. And so I think perhaps as we talk about the physical struggles, maybe that's like the key as we kick off this discussion today, is just learning how to set boundaries for yourself and
Yeah,
compartmentalize things better and not letting things kind of just overtake your life, like learning how to put certain things in perspective. And that can go for anything,
yes,
not just like the workload. That's a strategy for
right.
anything.
And I think because one affects the other. So for me, it was like my family life was struggling, like trying to find time. Like you said, couldn't go on vacations. If I did, I was working and it was like, hey, are you coming? What are you doing? And I'm like, hey, just a second, give me. And so even though like I was trying to compartmentalize it, it still affected other things. So because I couldn't enjoy typical family time, then that brought mental stress, right?
Right.
And then that mental stress affected my physical health. And then I just got on this vicious cycle of, of damage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got to somehow control this. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, in the beginning it was okay. And then in the middle it
Right.
was,
Right.
eh,
Then you start to see a light at the end of the tunnel, and then it gives you some hope that you're going to
yeah,
get through it. And so it ebbs and flows through the process. Now, I had the opportunity to speak with a friend who's still working through the program. And I had asked her, how has your health changed? How do you feel like your health has changed? And she made that point about compartmentalizing things
yeah.
and kind of get used to that. And so I thought that was really interesting because I hadn't really thought about it that way. And I don't, maybe some people are better able to do that than, you
Then
know,
you're right.
than others. So I think that's a really strong strategy is, you know, you kind of get used to a certain way of managing everything.
Right.
And I think your the physical aspect, the mental health aspect, the social emotional aspect maybe falls apart a little bit. So if
Yeah.
we do a
And then you
better
never know
job
because
of,
other life, you still have regular life coming at you too.
yes,
Like a car breaks down,
yes,
your house floods.
yes.
So you're still trying to
Hopefully
deal.
not, but maybe in
Yeah,
Florida.
no, yeah. I'm just giving like a worst case scenario, and thank goodness none of that happened to me. But I just know like those are other things that happen. If you've got babies at home and a baby gets sick and you're trying to like take care. So, but I think that's where that mental preparation where we can take a look back and be like, okay, life. We're just, we're gonna take it one day, one step, 1 minute at a time, and then, to deal with it because, like I said, you will get on that vicious cycle and you don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah, and my dad used to tell me this, and as I get older, it's so interesting that I think it's such a great strategy is take things and put them in folders mentally. And
Ah,
it goes back to compartmentalizing. You can put the school
yes.
here, the family stuff here, the exercising stuff here, and you open up the folder, you work on it, you close it, and you go to the next thing. And so you
Oh,
set some
that's great.
boundaries between things in your life so they don't just all blend and your life starts to control you. You don't control your
Yes.
life. I think that's a
And
huge, huge
that's huge.
problem.
And I
Learning how to do
love
that.
yes, yes. If you can master it, hey, great.
And we're still working on it.
And yeah, I always say I'm always a work in progress. Like I say, I learn and teach as I go, and whatever I, am telling to somebody else, it's probably because I'm going through it at the same time. But it but it's real. Like I was looking
Real.
up some of the statistics on like what this does, like the physical struggles, the neglecting the health and wellness. And it's talking about up to 50% of graduate students report symptoms of mental health. Physical health is high. It goes down to talk like one study found that nearly 40% of students were overweight, had obesity and were overweight. 19% of that had high elevated cholesterol levels. So when we talk about these struggles, it's real. It is, there have been studies and research on this particular topic. So, and I think it's important to know that whether you're just going in or while you're going through it, you're like, as long as I know I'm not alone, right?
Yes.
If I know that I'm not alone in this struggle, I've got others, not that misery loves company. I don't want to put it in that sense, but I just want people to know like it is okay. And I use that's such a silly term, like it's okay, but it really is.
Right.
Like we have to realize that it's it's going to be all right at the end of the day.
Oh,
You're just going through this moment.
yes, of course. And it's ironic because like for us, we studied health and human performance and
Yes.
exercise science physiology. And yet the requirements of the program, like we had to sit at the computer for long hours to write
Yes.
papers and to, get our assignments done. And so I just think that's so ironic for us, especially because we
Right.
know, the importance of physical activity. So, and I don't know that there's any way around it. I mean, to get a doctorate degree, to get any type of advanced degree, there is a
Yeah.
certain level of expectation. You have to sit at a computer because
Right.
that's how we write and that's, how we work these days.
I
But
mean,
as
you
we
could get the
talk about,
standing one. I wish I would have
right,
bought the standing desk or the
yes.
treadmill.
Yeah,
But in all honesty, I think when you're doing that form of writing and research, standing probably would be okay. Walking on a treadmill, maybe not so much. I think that would be a distraction for me. But hey, if other people, can do it, but I feel like I had to be so in tuned with the research that I think walking on a treadmill, I probably would have fallen many times. So,
well, I think I'm like you, actually. It's hard to focus like that. But I do remember a classmate, she used to get on her Peloton spinning bike and read. I was like,
oh,
that's impressive. So, I mean, there are definitely
yes,
ways to be physically active while you have to also, read and write.
yeah.
But I do think it's so important for students to understand that it probably feeds into why we see some decline in our physical health and mental
Oh,
health
for
because
sure.
we do have to sit at the computer, and that's for anybody in an office job. And so when we talk about
Yeah.
solutions and like you're saying, different strategies, just being mindful of maybe set a timer,
Yeah,
like
I used
I've
to
been at my
set
computer
before
for
the Apple Watch, before
yeah.
the watch came out, it tells me every so often, you need to stand. But when I worked in an office before before all these technical advices came out, um, I would set it at every hour to get up, stand up
There's
for, at least 5, 10 minutes every hour on the hour. Luckily, I worked at a very large senior community, had a very large campus, and I would just walk. And it was a good half a mile walk, just so I could walk the grounds, come back in. But
yeah,
it was saying in this study, it said nearly only 44% of doctoral students met the recommended 30 minutes of exercise that's required a
that's
day.
incredible.
That's terrible,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, I was like,
Hmm.
well, we're part of that statistic because I
Yes.
remember unless I got up early before, the day began, like five, I was part of the 5 o'clock club. I would get up, try to get my workout in because I knew the rest of the day I was glued to that computer.
Yeah.
But I will say, just because you exercise that one time in the morning, if you're sedentary the rest of the day, that's not good,
In fact,
and
I've
that's
read
where getting
studies.
up. Yeah,
I've read studies about that where
yeah.
it's almost as bad as smoking.
Yes,
Even if you
yes.
exercise that one time and then you sit the rest of the day. So
Not
maybe
good.
the
I used to tell my
lesson,
seniors that.
yeah,
What's that?
maybe the lesson there for us as we talk about the reality of the situation is just like being mindful that as you start and you work through it, you're gonna have it's just gonna you're gonna have to work at it. You're gonna have to be
Right.
mindful
You have to
about
be very
taking
mindful of it.
care of
Yes.
your health. I think that's the lesson. You just have to be very mindful about it and not let it just consume and control you. Learn
Yeah.
how to,
That I think if we would have had a podcast like this to watch before we
I
started,
know.
we would be so much better. So we're hoping that this is so beneficial to
Exactly.
anybody thinking about going through it or anybody who's in the midst of it right now, because I think this is so very pivotal information. And I wish I would have had it before. Even though I'm a health and wellness coach and I know these things, that's not the same as like this whole PhD program was like, you know, so different. I've never that was never part of my research as a health and wellness coach.
I agree with you
So
completely. And just having somebody, like you said, say to you, it's okay. We're going through it
yes,
too. I mean,
yes.
and that's why we wanted to do this. I mean, you know, we didn't go through it like perfectly. We got beat
Oh
up
my
along the
gosh.
way. And that's why we kind of said to each other, why don't we just have a conversation about what it did to us? And the truth
Yeah.
is, for me, because I don't know if you're feeling like it, but I still feel like I'm coming out of it and like
Oh
reclaiming
yes.
these things that I kind of lost in that process. So, I mean, that kind of leads us to the impact. Okay. So we know that
Yeah.
chronic stress and how you manage stress, we all manage it differently. And getting your doctorate is stressful.
Yeah.
Life is stressful. It's not just
Yes.
that. It's not just doctorate. It's just life. But how you manage it is so important because we know that chronic stress over time makes our body sick in different ways.
Yes. And just because we've graduated, that, relieved it. It's like how like consider like with childbirth. Having the baby, terrible, right? But they're like, as soon as the baby's in your arms, like all the pain goes away. So yes, right after we graduated, I was like, oh, I feel great. But then here comes the aftermath where it's like, okay, now I got to get a job. And now I'm trying to get this published. And I'm having that issue right now about getting mine published just through the university's publication. So the stress doesn't immediately end. Okay, so I want to warn everybody now, like you're still going to have a little bit of that, but that chronic stress and what it can do after, you still have to figure out your own coping mechanisms, which we'll share some different ones, but I just don't want people to think like you snap your fingers and it's done.
No, and when I was preparing for today, and I didn't want to bring like a lot of research to the discussion because that could kind of take up the whole discussion.
Right.
But it was astonishing to read how the academic world, there's just so much pressure to publish, and it's very competitive. Now, life is competitive. I get that. But the pressure to publish is very real. And
Yes.
so as we talk about physical struggles, it's all part of mental health. And so I think, and I love that we're having this conversation because I think we just have to have an honest conversation about and
Yeah.
I don't mean this in a negative way, but there's a level of toxicity to having so much pressure to
Yes.
compete and so and to publish and all the things that you're saying. So I'll share with you what happened real quick.
Yes. Please.
I think it was year two. Had a lot of stress going on. School wasn't doing very well at compartmentalizing or controlling everything. Had a huge paper due, 30-page paper due in the morning, or, I was pretty close to being done, but everything was just coming at me. And I don't know, maybe if our listeners feel that way, when you just feel like everything's coming at you and you're just trying to get this deadline done. And it's a lot. And I thought I was having a heart attack
Oh, like for real.
for real.
Oh
And
my.
I rushed to ER and I learned that I was having a panic attack.
Those are
Um,
real. I've
and I don't know if
Yep.
our listeners have ever had that. I didn't really understand what it was. To me, it felt like I was having a heart attack. But I had let school and stress and everything come to a point, and my body said, you
Yeah.
can't do this. It's not sustainable. So I share that with my our listeners and to be transparent about it because I don't want anybody else to have to go through that ever,
Right.
feeling.
No, that would be scary.
And that's a moment where you're just like, you know what? Pursuing a PhD or any goal shouldn't come at a cost,
No,
not
definitely
to your
not.
health. So that's yeah,
That's scary, but real, like you said. And
right.
it's like, and I feel like what the moments that led up to that, if you think about like we're in a rush, right? So like I got really good at time management because I knew like, okay, this is going to take me so many days and this is going to, so I would have to do that. I'd have to like mentally prepare myself like, hey, this is what you have to eat today. Like this or they like to process and do. Because I feel like when I got in a hurry, you ever think about traveling and you're in a rush, and when you're in a rush and you're anxious, you hit every red light. And every red light puts you back, and then you're angry, and then you're mad, and you're yelling at cars. And I'm like, I had to take a deep breath and think, all right, God, I know you're playing with me here. Because I always say I pray for patience. So then God puts all these activities that make me try to practice patience and I don't do very well. So I think that's like when you're rushing to get something done, you keep you'll keep stumbling and stumbling instead
Yes.
of just saying, all right, relax. I'm going to get there when I get there, whether it's your travel, whether it's this PhD journey. But if
Yes.
you don't slow down, take a deep breath,
Mhm.
and relax through the process, you're just, unfortunately, all these other things, because your negative energy, you're putting that negative energy out into the world and you're getting back exactly what you're putting out. So I think that's where we have to be like, whew.
Yeah, I
Otherwise,
agree. I agree
you
with
have
you.
that
It's like,
panic attack.
well, I agree with you. It's like you start something with so much excitement and exhilaration, and you want to put everything into it,
Yes.
and you come out of the gate just like running so fast. It's like pacing yourself in a race, right?
Yes.
When you
You get
start a
so
race,
excited.
it's so common to start way too fast, and then you feel it at like mile two. You're like, whoa, I went way too fast.
Yes. Too fast.
So, and it's not sustainable. So for me, that was my moment. And so perhaps our listeners, maybe you've had that moment, or maybe listening to my story will prevent you from having that moment. But don't
Yes.
let your health deteriorate to a point where you get that sick. Um,
Right.
so that's my advice there. Now,
Oh, I love it.
what could I have done differently in hindsight? I really love how our classmate Maria shared about just learning to compartmentalize your life and have control over your day and not let your day control you. And I think that's a key.
I think that's perfect. And I think, knowing to get up, walk around.
Yeah.
Dr. Fritsch, both of our chairs, she even said sometimes you got to walk away. And I think I might have shared this before. You just got to get up and walk away, come back refreshed. You have to eat healthy because
Yeah,
garbage in,
nutrition.
garbage out. If you're not
Right.
eating healthy, you will feel sluggish, even more sluggish. So you have to remember to eat right, hydrate, get up and move an hour. And I'm not saying go for a 3 mile run. I'm just saying go out and walk, walk away from the paper. Maybe it's a quarter of a mile walk. Maybe it's just a stroll around a pond, whatever. But you do have to get up, let the blood flow through the body, from
Yes.
being sedentary. Even I always say that even on an airplane ride, get up and walk. I don't care, walk to the bathroom, walk back and
No,
forth.
it's true.
Yeah, you cannot just
Circulation.
sit. Yeah, you cannot just sit there. So, and when that blood flows, you're bringing oxygen to the brain. It brings, it helps keep your thought process in check. So, even though, because I speak from a coaching side, I say those things, and I know it might be hard in the middle of it because I would have to tell myself, I can't walk away right now. Sometimes you just have to. You
Well, and
just
that
have to.
is so true because, you know, part of this journey was very sedentary. So you have to be
Yes.
very mindful to be active. And I don't know about you, but sometimes, like with being up late at night, you eat it late at night or you skip a meal because you're trying to meet a deadline. And these are just, it all goes back to like just being more in control of your day, more mindful about what you're doing, planning and preparing. And sometimes when you're in the mix of it all, it's very hard to remember to do that. So we're like a little
Oh,
reminder today, like slow down and take care
yes.
of yourself. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to
No.
lose your health. You're gonna be okay, like Marilyn said.
Yeah,
It's
you'll be
gonna be
okay.
okay. You're gonna get through it and just pace yourself and take care of yourself. And we know that physical activity is so important in managing
Yes.
stress. And so whether it's like you're saying, a 5 minute little break, or you can take an hour walk, just build it
Yes.
into your day, um,
Because it
throughout
releases
your day.
those, endorphins
Yeah.
and it will re-energize you. And then you can come back strong, rejuvenated, and ready to tackle, the rest of your
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
So it is important. And remember, it's you as the person that is more important than the paper. I mean, yes, we all know that this dissertation, it is what we're working towards. But like you said, you're more important. So you have
Yeah.
to remember that you are top priority. The paper can't finish if you are not in good health to finish it. So
Well, and I think it would be interesting to study PhD students and see on the self-determination theory and see where they fall between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Because
Oh,
I feel
yes.
like people who pursue these goals are highly internally motivated, intrinsically
Yes.
motivated to be successful. And with that comes a lot of pressure. And so
Yes.
it's kind of like remembering, okay, that's a great way to be. It feels good to be successful. But I mean, how often do you hear stories of people, young people, who just the stress just, it took a different turn. So it's just, so I guess
Right.
that's the point. We're like the red flag warning sign today. We're like,
Yes.
take care of your health. Don't end up in ER having a panic attack. And do all the things that, Marilyn's talking about in terms of how to manage stress. Yeah.
Yeah. Meditation,
Yeah.
exercise, eating healthy, all of those or one or two of them. You just have to, and then maybe you have your own thing. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it's Pilates. The
Mhm.
exercise modality can be your choice, but just physical activity, some form of physical activity, and then reach out, ask for help.
Yeah.
Try to build a support system within your advisors, within your cohorts. Having that support system, I think, was everything for me. And like I said, I didn't have that until towards the end. I don't know what happened that I missed some of that in the beginning with everybody, but I definitely was very appreciative at the end because even like Sarah and I, that's kind of how we met. We
Yeah.
talked about like, hey, what part are you on? Oh, and then we
Right.
realized we both were Ironman triathletes. And so I was like, hey, this is cool. And it wasn't until that moment, just being able to share what I was going through with you, that you helped me get, through the rest of the program. And so I was very thankful for that. I was very thankful for Dr. Fritch. I think I blew her phone up almost every day. So make sure you have some form of support system through the school. Because they know what you're going through. It's hard to have a support system outside of the school because they don't really know the process. They might not know the steps unless you're talking to somebody else who, already has the degree. But I think having the relatable relationship, I
Yes.
think was important.
So when I gave the commencement speech, I referenced a book. It's called The Mountain Is You. And I know we've been working through it a little bit together in your wellness
Yes,
calls that you conduct. And I love that about reaching out for help, but also helping others. So the way I
yes,
spoke about it is, you know, when we're climbing this mountain, there are gonna be people that are ahead of us. And there are going to
yes,
be people who are walking right alongside us. But there are also
yeah,
going to be people behind us. So I think it's really important to remember, like you helped me move forward because you were a little ahead of me. And it was just I'm so grateful for that. But then we were at a point where we're kind of helping each other.
yes, and
And there's people who are still working through getting through the program. And so I make myself available to helping them, well, however, if it's mentally,
right,
just in friendship. And I think that's just such an important lesson for life. We're
yes,
not just walking through alone.
right.
Some people are going to guide us. Some people are going to be right where we're at. And some people aren't as far along. So you have to extend a hand backwards.
I 100%. It's a biblical principle too, like if you feel I always say if you feel down, go help somebody
Exactly.
because by you helping them, they feel better, you feel better. It's a win-win situation. And I think we shouldn't be so arrogant as like, well, I'm done and I'm moving on and
Right.
you
There's
need to reach
still,
back and
yes,
help.
we have friends who are still in it and they are
Yes.
going to finish and we're going to be there at the finish line for
We're
them.
going to be their
We're not just,
cheerleader.
yes.
Yes, I think
So,
so. I think that's very important.
and I love that part about the journey. I think that's the human side of it. Like, okay, we want to
Yeah.
get this goal. We're focused on the goal. But don't forget, we're all people, we're humans and we love
Yeah.
connection and we want to be caring and compassionate towards each other. So, if perhaps you're right now feeling like you're just stuck in the weeds of trying to get through an assignment or something like that. And I guess what Marilyn and I are saying is like, go find somebody and just,
Yeah.
reach out to somebody else. They
Yes.
might be in a much worse situation than you, and you've
Right.
just helped them and invigorated yourself.
Well, and that's what I think I thought with myself. Like in the beginning, I thought, man, like I always say, like these people are so smart, like I'm like, should I even be here right now?
No, of
And I
course.
was like thinking like during some of the discussions, like there were, some of the responses, I was like, wow, that was like super genius. I was like, am I up to that level? And then I'm like, I didn't want to reach out because sometimes I'm thinking, man, I am not there. Like, what is this? And I was struggling like internally with my own, like, because I'm a perfectionist and I'm beating myself up. And then I'm like, am I the only one that's feeling this way? And that's when I wish I would have reached out because I feel like everybody was just soaring through and doing great. And then afterwards, you're like, no, like a lot of us were struggling and most of us didn't even know it.
Well, and it's and life happens. We talk about this each week. Like life just happens too. Like you could be just going along, like what happened to me in my fourth year. Um, I got hit in the pool. I had gotten a concussion. Somebody swam into my
Oh
head.
my gosh, you
And
had a lot
so
of little
yeah, I had a lot of little things along the way, but it was funny because my teacher was like, "Oh, your writing seems different." I'm like, "Oh, well." So, I mean, my point is not to make it about that, but my point is that you're going to have setbacks along the way. And so you have to reach out to people and just if you're feeling like your physical health is struggling in some way, or you get diagnosed with some, sickness, or you get
right.
the flu, or whatever physically your body is reacting to stress. Again,
Yeah,
and I want to say it again, pursuing any goal in life shouldn't come at the cost of your health. So
right.
that's really,
I think that's a
um,
very important thing
yes,
for people to remember,
yes,
right? That's
yeah,
it's you are number one priority. So care of yourself first. The rest will eventually fall into place.
yes. And okay, so let me ask you one quick question before, as we kind of talk about
Sure.
next week. What do you think you could have done differently? I mean, really?
I think I would have reached out in the beginning more, quicker before it became a problem, before I felt the stress. I wish I would have reached out to other students on the side to have that better support system. And I think I would have listened to my own advice about the physical activity and getting up and moving more,
Mm,
like
That's,
getting up. And
I
because I
agree.
didn't, I would go hours and hours at that computer. So like I say it now, but I wish I would have done it then just to stay more active. Because I think if I would have stayed more active during the process, I would have had a little bit more better, like a better mental clarity with everything.
Hmm.
And I didn't get that until after I talked with Dr. Fritsch, and she's like, walk away. So I think if I'd have done that in the beginning, that would have helped. And I think it would have helped the way I look in the mirror now. And I'll just leave it at that. Let's
Well,
just say we might have gained the freshman 15 during our
only
PhD journey.
15. I finally got
Well,
on the
yeah, that's
scale.
what I said. Oh, yeah. I won't tell you exactly what the number is, but
We're,
just know I don't look the same.
well, we're digging out. We're digging out of
Yes.
the blizzard.
Yes.
But just real quick, I just want to make the point that, chronic stress over time, it does have an impact on your cognitive health. When you're saying like brain fog and
Yes.
things like that, um, and cardiovascular health.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
it impacts all our systems in our body. So, we talk about physical struggles. It's just important to have coping and coping skills and strategies to put in place. One thing that you mentioned, and just to recap real quick, breathing. And I don't know a lot about that. I'd like to learn more about it, but I know that that's a wonderful strategy that our listeners could think about as well. There's different
Yes, I think
ways, there's
so.
different types, and it's some of it's integrated with yoga. So I think breathing
Yes, and I
techniques is
did. So part of my study, and I know we're going to share later in our other episodes, I had done an intervention, and part of it was meditation, and a few each, because we did it for 8 weeks. Every once in a while I would throw in a breathing one,
okay.
a breathing technique into the mix of the meditation, and I always felt so great after.
Okay.
But I will warn people, if you've never done a breathing mechanism or a breathing type of meditation, just remember, like if you've never done that deep breathing, do it slow because it will make you, can make you lightheaded.
Okay.
So getting in all that oxygen. So I'll warn you on that. but that is definitely a good one. And it's so easy, and you can do it while you're sitting in your chair at the table, with your work. But that's an excellent one. I'm glad you brought that up.
Definitely. So I think what we're talking about, and I hope that our listeners feel this way too, it's very relatable to
Yes.
just life. Whether you're working on your
Oh,
PhD, I
yeah.
mean, we are using our experiences from the PhD journey to share about these topics, but they're very relatable to just managing life.
I
So,
think so.
and I've been reaching out to different people, and the feedback is about our podcasts, and the feedback is yes, maybe our journeys were a little different, like why we got into the program, what, different circumstances we had to endure, during the
Right.
program. But the reality, and the mental health aspect of it is very relatable to a lot of
I
people.
think so.
So I think
We-
that this is an important conversation to have.
Yes.
And we are growing into this platform ourselves. So we appreciate your patience while we, learn and grow. But hopefully information is useful and important.
Yes. So we appreciate your comments. We would love your feedback and questions. If you're
Definitely.
just trying to, you just stumbled across our podcast and you're like, oh, what is this? And maybe you're thinking about joining the program, shoot us some questions because we'll add it into our either into one of the sessions or into a new weekly session. But we would love your questions. So please continue to like comment feedback because like Dr. Gordon said, we're growing and evolving in this as
Oh,
well.
yes.
And we are trying to stay very adaptable.
And we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and we just learned about Castbox. So I
Yeah,
had never
that's a
heard
new
about
one.
that. So that's I think it's a free platform to listen to our podcasts. Next week, we touch on kind of the same things every week, but we just dive a little deeper. So we've talked about balance in this episode, but we're going to dive deeper in terms of finding balance, work life, and identity beyond academics. And then we've also been brainstorming some other future episodes. If you have any ideas, share them with us. And we are going to take one episode and talk about our research. So we're going to really dive into what we studied in school. We hope we'll find that interesting as well.
Yes, I think the whole part of the journey. And I don't know if you, but I was a little surprised to see the classes that, we did have to, that we were offered. And I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. So yes, I think that's going to be a great one to talk about. Just that whole course outline is interesting. And then definitely the study, the research,
Yeah, and maybe if our listeners would like to learn, we're happy to share how we ran our studies and just, how we navigated all of that kind of research part of our journey. I mean, we've been focusing on kind of the mental health aspect of the
yes,
last couple weeks, but we're happy to transition to like the research side of this journey. So
that'd be great.
anyhow, these always go by so fast.
Yes. Yay.
So, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, just again, like last time I think I talked about just believing in yourself. This time I'm going to say just take care of yourself.
I love how you
Just
do that.
remember to take care of yourself.
Yes, each week, because the first week was believe in yourself. Last week was celebrate the small wins.
Yeah.
And this week it's going to be
Yeah. Taking care of yourself.
just take care of yourself.
Just take
So,
care of yourself.
all
Yay.
righty. Well, we'll talk to everybody next week.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for
Okay.
listening.
Thank you. All
Goodbye.
right. Bye.